Casey's Audio Vault.
Luke Doucet.
November 5th, 2010.
Enjoy this ringback while we connect your call.
Hello?
Hello, is this Luke?
Yes, it is.
Hi, Luke. It's Casey from Power 97 in Winnipeg.
Hi, Casey. I'm sorry about the mix-up.
Hey, that's no problem. Where are you at right now?
We're in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, just loading up the van, ready to hit the road for Regina tonight.
Okay, and then pack up and hitting the West End Cultural Center tomorrow.
That's right.
You on a van? You on a bus?
We're in a van. We flew across Ontario, and we're doing the prairies in a van, then we'll fly out to BC, and then we'll fly back to Ontario, and, sort of a combination of planes, trains, and automobiles.
Right. Where are you calling home these days?
Hamilton, Ontario is where my wife and I have a house, so it's, depending on your perspective or who you ask, it's either Toronto's hippest new West Side neighborhood, or it's the Brooklyn of Ontario, or it's just plain old Hamilton.
Have you moved a lot in your life?
Well, I was born in Halifax, and I lived in Halifax for 8 years, and then I lived in Winnipeg for 12 years. Winnipeg still remains the place I've spent the most of my life. And then I moved to Vancouver, and I was there for 8 years or so, and then I lived in Toronto for a few years, then I lived in Nashville for about a year, and now it's Hamilton. So yeah, the short answer is yes, I've moved a lot.
Are you kind of a sentimental guy? Have you been able to, keep all the stuff that you've accumulated through your life and all these different moves?
I'm not a pack rat. I don't keep anything. I tend to let things go. In fact, as soon as the tour is done, I usually, the tour book is gone, the laminates are gone. In fact, I got my laptop ripped off last night in Saskatoon, and I don't actually mind all that much, strangely enough. How
do you keep in touch with, your wife back at home?
Well, my wife's on the road actually playing with Sarah McLachlan right now. So she called me this morning from the airport in Austin. She's flying to Birmingham, Alabama tonight, or this afternoon, to play in Birmingham. But we do the Skype thing. I mean, I'm going to have to get a new computer now that mine got ripped off. But I spend a lot of time on the phone, I suppose. Although my wife, when she's not out working with Sarah, she's working with me. And when she's not working with me and my band, I'm usually working with her and her band. She's Melissa McClelland. Mm-hmm. So she's busy doing her own thing as well. But we usually work together. This is the first time in 5 or 6 years that we're not actually on the road together all the time. So this fall is unique for us. But I'll see her in about a week and a half.
Was the new album Steel City Trawler? Is that something that you worked on with her, or was that separate as well?
Well, it's my record, but she was involved. She sings on a few tracks, and we've been working on each other's albums for a few years now. I mean, I produce her albums, and she sings on mine, and when we go on tour, we're in each other's bands, and then we both work with Sarah when we're both available to. But we're actually gonna record a record together sometime in the next. Well, we've already started it. We're gonna finish it in December, I think, and that'll be the first time that we actually have an album that's got both our faces on the cover. That kind of thing. So, but we do work together a lot. I think it's the only way as touring musicians to be married. We have to work together.
Probably the only way you guys could get to see each other if you're working that hard.
Well, and if she was a school teacher and I was a rock and roller, I don't know if that would work out.
Anything else that you got plans on working on? Producing anybody else's records?
There's a record that I'm going to do for a singer-songwriter from Vancouver called Cameron Latimer. I'm going to do that record, and I'm doing this record with Melissa. And that's about it for now. Other than touring my record and then touring some more stuff with Sarah in the new year, I don't really have a whole lot of time to take on other projects, although I would certainly like to. I'm kind of looking for the next record I produce. I wouldn't mind producing a band. I've produced a lot of solo artists, but I'm kind of thinking I'd like to produce a rock and roll record, so we'll see.
You've got some pretty cool artwork in the sleeve of Steel City Trawler. Were you kind of a comic book kid when you were younger?
No, I wasn't really a comic book kid. Ironically, it was Melissa who kind of turned me on to the world of the graphic novels. She's a big fan of a lot of the different graphic novelists, Joe Sacco and Julie Doucet and people like that. And she always had this idea that she wanted to get a comic book artist to do the artwork for one of her records. And she just never did it, so I kind of stole the idea.
Do you have quite a vinyl collection? How do you usually listen to music?
Yeah, you know what? I do have a vinyl collection. In fact, I don't even have an iPod. I mean, I use iTunes and stuff with my laptop, but No, I listen to vinyl. I find when I go home, the first thing I do is I start flipping through my old like early '70s Stones records and Faces and Small Faces records and stuff like that. I mean, I have a soft spot for the '70s when it comes to rock and roll and you know, singers and songwriters and stuff like that. And I like the process of having to grab the plastic and put it on, and then you know, in 22 minutes you have to flip it over. I enjoy that whole process.
Yeah, me too. It's very, it's nostalgic because one of the earliest memories for me as a kid in music is just going through my parents' record collection.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's interesting. And you talk about the artwork on my record. One of the reasons why I wanted the artwork to be special on this record is because I mean, the day may be soon arriving when people will stop buying CDs altogether. And if that's really truly what's about to happen, I kind of wanted this record to represent all the things that, you know, music used to represent to me when I was a little kid in the 70s, which is that you hold it in your hands and you look at it and you flip it over and you read the notes and it's a thing you can hold in your hand. That relationship is a part of it. And that seems to be largely gone with music these days, which is just a natural evolution of technology. But I do miss it. I miss those days. And I remember sitting behind my mom's couch and, you know, looking at Beatles records and looking at, you know, Neil Young records when I was a kid, and holding on to that cardboard sleeve was an important part of that relationship.
And the smell of it too. It's just it's kind of all encompassing.
Yeah, so absolutely. And I think most art forms are like that. You know, they have to some degree, but that's all changing, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, iTunes is trying to keep up with some of the artwork. They're doing a little bit better with the latest updates where artists can put the full digital artwork on there, and so you can just click as you're listening, and you can still click through, but it's not tactile.
No, it's not tactile. That's a really good point. And I don't know if you noticed on my record, the title, like the cover of the album is embossed.
Mm-hmm.
So it has a tactile quality to it as well. But you know, I mean, I am nostalgic. You mentioned that earlier. I'm nostalgic as well when it comes to the relationship I have with music. But at the same time, there's a lot of great stuff that's come. The technology has allowed for a lot of really wonderful stuff too. I mean, now, you know, you can you can listen to music, and while you're listening to music, you can flip through websites and MySpace and Facebook, and all, you know, you can watch YouTube videos. I mean, it's just so much more stuff that people have access to than we used to. I mean, it used to be. I'm reading Keith Richards' biography right now called Life.
Yeah,
that's just come out, and you know, he talks about trying to find music as a young person in England, like trying to get your hands on old blues to hear the music you wanted to hear. Whereas nowadays, you can hear whatever you want. You just got to look it up on your computer, and it's right at your fingertips. So it's a very different world that way.
When you were growing up in Winnipeg, what ages were you? Did you went to like junior high and high school here?
Yeah, I went to Sacré-Cœur French immersion school. I got to Winnipeg when I was 7 years old, and I left when I was 19. So all my formative years, like I lived in the west side, like in Wolseley, and I went to River Heights Junior High, and then a brief stint at Calvin High, and then a brief stint at Grant Park, and then I ended up graduating out of University of Winnipeg Collegiate, and then I moved to Vancouver just after I graduated, a couple of years after I graduated.
Well, that almost sounds like Neil Young's early years.
Well, yeah, and he came from out east as well.
Yeah,
and he spent his teenage years in Winnipeg, and he ended up at Calvin, and then he went west. And I kind of did the same thing without realizing it. It's funny. I met Neil Young about a year ago at a gig. I was playing with Sarah McLachlan, and he was on the bill. It was a bill between Neil and Sarah and Sheryl Crow. And at one point, Neil was 10 feet outside my trailer backstage, and he was just standing there chatting with Ben Keefe, you know, rest his soul. And his wife, and I thought, well, I have two choices here. I can either go up and say hello to Neil and be one of those guys who's tugging on his shirt sleeves, or I can not meet Neil Young. And neither one of those choices was very appealing. So I was like, well, I guess I have to go and say hello. And I told him, I said, listen, there's this rumor that was always floating around, you know, Winnipeg when I was a kid, that you rode a horse through the hallways of Calvin High School. Is there any truth to that? And he just looked at me with this really kind of disappointed, disgusted look on his face, and he said, man, how would I get a horse in there? and he turned around and walked away, and that was it.
Oh, Luke, well, I appreciate you phoning in, and we're looking forward to the show tomorrow night at West End Cultural Center. Have a good drive across the prairies.
Thanks, man.
All the interviews you want on iTunes and at Power97.com. Casey's Audio Vault.
Casey Norman is Power 97's music director and can be heard every weekday from 2 till 6 in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada.
Power 97 is Winnipeg's best rock.